Hey, what's going on, Who That Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones, the host of the State of the Saints podcast. And this is a live edition of the State of the Saints podcast. Thank you very much for checking it out, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook. Thank you very much. Hope everybody had a good weekend. I hope everybody had a productive weekend. Hope everybody is safe out there. Good morning, good evening, good night, whatever you're listening or looking at this video. Just wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about the New Orleans Saints and also give my thoughts about the NFL Combine. The NFL Combine, of course, took place at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis over the past few days. I think maybe from like Thursday, wrapped it up like around Sunday morning. A lot of things that you can look at. A lot of guys like kind of, up their stock. A lot of guys stock dropped due to this combine. Just looking and evaluating some of this talent that I'm watching, man, I'm really, really impressed. There's a couple guys that I feel like kind of helped themselves. A couple people hurt themselves. I want to start off by the people that I feel like that hurt themselves. And one person that I have to say, and I made a video about this guy, was Laviska Shenault out of Colorado. A lot of people in the Who That Nation want him to be a New Orleans Saint, but I think he ended up hurting himself. I'm reading media sources saying that he's going to have to get core surgery that's probably going to put him out 4 to 6 weeks, and it might affect his draft stock. And Laviska Shenault, as much as he did at Colorado and the big numbers that he put up in the yards after the catch, he does have a history of being hurt from time to time. And that's something that's very alarming to teams that are trying to get that next wide receiver. Now, I don't think it's going to affect his draft stock to a point where, he falls into the second round or anything like that. But it is going to make teams kind of raise their eyebrows and wonder, should I even draft this guy? Should I even go out here and try to, put a first round pick on him? That's somebody that stock dropped, in my opinion. Another guy is Jake Fromm. Jake Fromm, I already told people, from the jump. I just think that Jake Fromm is a guy that's probably going to be a journeyman in the National Football League, a game manager at best. He's not really anything special, in my opinion. I just think that he's an average quarterback, average arm, average skills. Probably going to sit on somebody's bench with a clipboard. Probably in a couple of years might end up being a head coach somewhere. I'm just not a fan of Jake Fromm, and I think the fact that he was throwing after Jacob Eason, I think that kind of affected him too, because everybody was just so wild and blown away by Jacob Eason's arm, and then he comes up with the noodle arm. You know what I'm saying? Nah, I'm just kidding, man. I don't think he had noodle arm, but that is a hard act to follow, man, when you're going up against a guy that can throw the ball 60-plus yards down the field. So I think that it kind of hurt him. I think he was kind of nervous out there. And honestly, he didn't show those leadership qualities. And the person that I feel like it kind of helped, the stock is rising right now, is Jalen Hurts. And honestly, Who That Nation, this is a guy that the Saints can possibly end up getting maybe in the second. If the Saints try to trade up into the second round, even in the third round. Jalen Hurts, he really threw the ball really well. And now people are kind of comparing him to Dak Prescott. Now, I know people may not like Dak Prescott. People might, say that he's average. But at the end of the day, Jalen Hurts has a pretty high ceiling. He has a higher ceiling than Jake Fromm does, I tell you that. But I think he has some skills. He's not like a guy that's going to start right away. And I think he'll fit, what the Saints are trying to do. That he can sit on a bench. He can learn from Drew Brees. I feel like, he has to clean up a few things, so you don't have to worry about him coming in playing right away. I think that it might help him. But I think that it's showing, him running the 4.6 40, him throwing the football, with good velocity and also getting the ball where it needs to be. He shocked a lot of people. A couple guys that I'm going to name you probably never even heard of. One person is Antoine Winfield Jr. He's a cornerback out of Minnesota. Now, you probably remember his dad who played for the Minnesota Vikings all those years, but he really stood out, man. He wasn't a guy that just put up those, shocking numbers or anything like that, but he did a lot of things well. And he's not going to be one of those guys that's going to be a first day draft pick, probably going to be a second or, second day, probably second, third round pick. But if the Saints are looking for a cornerback, a guy that's smart, a guy that's intelligent, you don't have to worry about being out of position, a student of the game. I mean, he has the pedigree because, of course, like I said, his father played all those years in the National Football League. Antoine Winfield, he really did a good job. Also, C.J. Henderson, man, he really shocked me. C.J. Henderson out of Florida, I did a video on him a couple weeks back also. He's 6'1", 205 pounds, but he's really strong, man. I think he bench pressed 225 20 times, and that kind of shocked me because if you look at C.J. Henderson's frame, he's a really small guy. So for him to lift it up 20 times, man, I got to tell you, I was really shocked by that. But that just goes to show you the deceptive strength that he has. And that's something that you really like to see, man, especially like when you trying to find a cornerback and press coverage. Now, the Saints could make a gamble, and end up getting another cornerback in the first round. But this right here, this guy isn't one of those slot corners, man, that the Saints been needing. That's why I brought up the name Antoine Winfield. I feel like he will be a really good corner. This guy is going to be a first day one starter, and I would not be surprised if he's the team's number one cornerback wherever he goes. Rather it's, the Saints, which I highly doubt, because I think by him running a 4.4 in the 40 and bench pressing 20 times 225, I think that he's probably going to get drafted in the top 15. A wide receiver I feel like the Saints need to pay attention to is a guy out of Baylor, and his name is Denzel Mims. Now, you probably never heard of him either, but he ran a 4.4 in a 40. He has really good hands. He has really good size, and I was impressed. I mean, I was really, really impressed by the way that this guy was, playing out there. And he did a lot of things well. And a lot of people didn't know he was that fast. And I think that he is a guy that the Saints can end up getting because he's one of those guys that flew under the radar. Everybody's looking at CeeDee Lamb. Everybody looking at Judy. Everybody looking at Justin Jefferson. And nobody really paying attention to Denzel Mims. Like I said, man, if the Saints end up getting a wide receiver and you probably never heard of this person and it's not a sexy name and it's not a person that you never even heard of, man, don't get discouraged because this is a deep draft at wide receiver. Like, they've ranked really high. Like, this is one of the highest rated wide receiver groups in NFL history. So you might end up getting somebody, you might be raising your eyebrow like, huh? Who is that? I don't know what that is. But trust and believe the people that they end up drafting, they're going to be contributors to the team. And I ain't just talking about in a couple years like a Emmanuel Butler. I'm talking about right away. Rather it be in the third round, rather it be in the fourth round. I'm telling you, these guys are going to be contributors because there's a lot of talent out there. If you watched the combine, if you watched it at the wide receiver position, not many balls were hitting the ground. And somebody else that I feel like you have to be on the lookout for might be a long shot because I don't think the Saints really pursuing this position. But safety Jeremy Chin out of Southern Illinois. This guy's like a Cam Chancellor type player. I mean, he like 6'3", 222 pounds, really strong, man, really physical. I think he ran maybe like a 4.5 or something like that in a 40. And, all he did was catch 3+ interceptions every single year he was at Southern Illinois. Small school, but a big guy, has a big frame. And I think that he might be a really good player in the National Football League. He probably can come down and play a little bit of linebacker because he was a short tackler. And also you can put him in coverage. And he'll really pay dividends, especially, since he's a lengthy guy. So be on the lookout for him. I don't see him being, on the first day, probably maybe in the third round or something like that. You might see a Jeremy Chin come off the board. Wouldn't be surprised if you see him in the second round also, man. But he's going to be like a day 2 type guy. But just a lot of talent, man. A lot of talent. You got to be impressed with Isaiah Simmons running a 4.3 at the linebacker position, 6'3", 230-pound, running a 4.3. The Saints ain't going to sniff that guy, but you have to be impressed, man. And a lot of people are looking for that Isaiah Simmons type linebacker, a guy that can tackle really well and a guy that can play coverage really well. This guy's out there playing like he's a safety or cornerback most of the time when he's in coverage. But the Saints are not going to sniff that guy. I mean, that's just the honest truth. But those are the guys that kind of stood out to me. Running back position, got to give a notch out to Cam Akers out of Florida State. I watched that young man play ever since he was in high school in Clinton, Mississippi. I always knew that he was going to be really good. I think he kind of suffered a little bit at Florida State because Jimbo Fisher left. And, they, end up having some down seasons. But I think he's going to be a much better pro than he was a college player. But if you're looking for, a running back or something like that, I think that Cam Akers is a guy that's probably going to be one of those every down backs, and he's going to be really, really good. I see Steven said something, Lamb out of Oklahoma. CeeDee Lamb, I mean, man, I feel like I'm just kind of beating a dead horse here. I mean, this guy's incredible. I think we already knew how good he was. I mean, I know a lot of people seen that video of him with the pirouette type catch. I mean, but honestly, what can't CeeDee Lamb do? I mean, he runs really good routes. He gets yards after the catch. He just incredible. I feel like he's going to be probably the first wide receiver off the board. It's probably a toss-up between him and Judy. But I think his size and his yards after the catch and his ability, he's probably going to go ahead. And I can see him probably playing for somebody like the Las Vegas Raiders. I think the Raiders probably going to end up drafting him. But that's my thoughts about the combine. And I would love to hear from you. You can comment down below. You can ask questions if you want to. I answer a few questions too. But I do want to get into something that a lot of people have been talking about. This is making its rounds in the national media. And I'm talking about Michael Thomas' comments about Tony Romo's new contract with CBS. Now, if you haven't heard, Tony Romo just signed a $17 million a year deal with CBS. And it has a lot of the players upset. One in particular is Michael Thomas, the star wide receiver of the Saints, who just signed a $100 million deal. And he talked about how unfair it is. How Tony Romo is making about 90% of what the NFL players are making right now. And he has really stirred the pot, and he's really having a lot of people thinking about the NFL and their treatment of these players. I think we all can agree we love the NFL. We love it. We love it with a passion. We love football. We can't get enough of it. It's America's pastime. Back in the day, people used to talk about how baseball was America's pastime, during wartime and stuff like that. People just love baseball. People love, Lou Gehrig. People used to love Ted Williams, Babe Ruth. I mean, guys like that. But football is clearly America's pastime now. It is the most popular sport in America. And I think that the owners take advantage of that. I think they take advantage of some of these players out here. They try to get everything that they possibly can out of them without giving the players absolutely nothing. You look at some of these contracts that we be seeing. We look at these guys be signing 6-year, $100+ million deals, but only like 40 of it be guaranteed. Only 50 of it be guaranteed, and most of the other stuff is just wrapped up in incentives. And if you think about the risk that NFL players take, it's a higher risk than a baseball player. It's a higher risk than a basketball player. But baseball and basketball give their players, guaranteed contracts. But versus the NFL, they give them absolutely nothing most of the time. And most of they deals be on the back end of their contracts. So these guys are probably not getting as much money as we think, because around 5th year, 6th year, when the owners consider them damaged goods, they ready to send them out of the door, and these guys don't get their deals. That's why you look at a lot of these players, like in the middle of their contracts, they start like wanting to negotiate and wanting to sit out and stuff like that. And we as fans get mad because sometimes we don't understand, because all we understand is, man, we want this guy to be on the field because he contribute to our team's success. But when you are up to get about $20 million and you're never going to see it in those last 2 years of the contract, you want to talk about it. Michael Thomas is absolutely right, man. There's no way that announcers should be making more money than the NFL players, okay? Because at the end of the day, the NFL players are the reason why the announcer is making the money. We don't care what channel the NFL come on. The NFL can come on the Home Shopping Network, and we gonna make the home shopping network one of the highest rated channels, on TV. We don't care. So the fact that the NFL players aren't making as much as Tony Romo is pretty sad. That's the reason why a lot of them don't want to sign this new CBA or collective bargaining agreement, because they feel like it's unfair. You're giving extra games, but yet you're not giving in extra money. It's just the same amount of money, but just another game. And these owners are making hand and fist and money, and these players basically are getting the bare minimum. Basically like pennies in a can, so to speak. We look at it like it's a lot of money because it is to us. Because we're average, everyday Joe Blows. We get up in the morning, we wash our face, we brush our teeth, we go to work. We punch that clock, we clock in, we clock out, and they making money that we can't even fathom about sometimes. Like we can aspire to, to do that, but most of the time, like we have to roll with the punches. But in comparison to like what the owner's making, that's nothing. Like basically take $1,000. Like if you had $1,000 and then, give $1 to somebody. That's like equivalent to what the NFL does to these players. And now they want them to sign a contract where these players have to play an extra game. That's an extra, beating on their body, but you don't want to pay them more money. These players want money. And honestly, I feel like the NFL, the way that they treat their players, it's just absolutely sad. I feel like they're the ones that need to be getting guaranteed contracts. They're the ones out here, that's putting their body on the line, even their lives on the line. How many times have we seen cases like, Knox, out there in Chicago, he ended up, having temporary paralysis, or Ryan Shazier, the linebacker, out of from the Pittsburgh Steelers, his career cut short. These guys one hit away from losing everything, including the activity of their limbs. You get what I'm saying? So these guys need to come up with better ways of accommodating these players. And I know we look at Michael Thomas, him making $20 million a year, allegedly, most of that stuff is wrapped up in incentives, but we look at him and say, what is he complaining about? But that's just no different on your job, man. If you are like the person that's drawing the money, if you're the person that's the reason why the company is, moving in a positive direction, you want your paycheck to reflect it. Nobody at the end of the day want to feel like they being shortchanged, because if I'm working, man, and I know that I'm doing the best that I can, and I know that I'm the best at my craft, you best believe that I want everything that's coming to me. I want the house, the cars, the kids, and the dog. You get what I'm saying? I ain't leaving nothing behind. I ain't leaving no stone left unturned. So I agree with what he's saying. And I think that we look at people like Michael Thomas also, and we look at some of these NFL players, and we think that all of these guys are getting paid the same. They're not, man. There's not many millionaires in the National Football League's locker rooms. Like, you may look at like some of the people on the Saints team. Like, I'm just using it for example, like Drew Brees. Drew Brees, he makes incredible money, right? Drew Brees is a millionaire. Tom is a millionaire. Teron Armstead is a millionaire. Who else am I missing? Cam Jordan is a millionaire. These guys are, making a whole bunch of money, but you look at somebody like safety Saquon Hampton, who's like a 5th round pick. You think he making that type of money? He got cracking $1 million. Somebody like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, he not cracking $1 million. You thinking these guys are just making all this money, but they're not, man. Most of these guys, probably making less, than $500,000. And these owners, if you look at somebody like, Paul Allen, God rest his soul, before he passed away, he was making, he was like $24 billion or something like that. Like, that's crazy. The Khan family out there in Jacksonville, I think they're worth like $12 billion. Gail Benson, she's worth like $2 billion. Like, come on, man. And these players are making less than $1 million. Like, you talk, like that's almost like factory work in comparison. So no way Tony Romo should be making more money than NFL players. Not taking anything from Tony. Tony is an incredible announcer. I think we have to give a guy credit. At quarterback, he was mediocre. We already know what time of day it was. When the game was on the line and the chips on the table, you knew he was going to throw a pick. How they say, There's three things that are, showing life: debt, taxes, and Tony Romo throwing a pick. But when it comes to him being an announcer, the guy's good, man. He can call plays, before they happen. He know exactly where they're going. He has a good eye for the game. So I mean, he's a joy to watch. But for him to be making more money than these NFL players, absolutely not, man. Absolutely not. But I'm going to open the floor for you all. I'm going to answer a few questions before I get up out of here. Let's see what we got here. The DV out of Georgia Southern. Leo Lewis out of Mississippi State. Yeah, they got, man, they had some really good showings, but those are the guys that kind of stood out for me. When I'm looking at the combine, I'm not really looking at guys that I know they're going to be in the top 10 because I don't feel like they're going to serve the Saints. I'm looking at these guys that are probably going to be flying under the radar, guys that, going to be those under the couch type players. And what I mean by under the couch is like, I used this analogy last time, when I did a video. It's almost like when you're vacuuming up a floor and stuff, sometimes you miss what's underneath the couch. You know what I'm saying? So you got to raise it up and then you'll find, you got a little lint under there. You got a little dust that you have to, vacuum up too. And I feel like these guys are the under the couch guys. So some of the guys that I named, I consider them as under the couch guys. I'm not really too much looking at CeeDee Lamb. I'm not too much looking at Jared Judy. I'm not too much looking at Isaiah Simmons. Guys like that, you already know where they're going to stand. I just feel like, we just playing ourselves if we think those guys are going to be there by the time it's time for the Saints to pick. The Saints will really have to do some moving and some shaking to get Isaiah Simmons. They'll have to really do some moving and some shaking to get a CeeDee Lamb. I mean, it's just not happening. So I try to focus on those guys that I know that can be contributors to the Saints, probably in some of those later rounds because teams are not going to pick them. So it's no disrespect or no knock on any of those players or anything like that. They're really good. I just feel like that's just wishful thinking if I feel like those guys are coming to New Orleans. Most players who sign a lengthy deal know, they know halfway through in order to get any money out of it. The CBA has given the team so much leverage to basically screw the players over. Yep. But honestly, I don't even blame them. I don't blame the players. I blame DeMaurice what his name? DeMaurice or whatever his name is. He's the leader of the Players Association or whatever like that. Yeah, DeMaurice Smith. That's his name. But anyway, I blame him, man, because that last collective bargaining agreement was absolutely hot garbage. Okay. They see this is what the owners do. Feel me on this. The owners know what the players want. They know what the players want going in. Okay? So they know that the players want more money. So they don't look at it like, okay, we're going to get the players more money. We're going to get the players more money, but we're going to do something that benefits us as well. So they know the players want to get more money. Well, you want more money, let's make more games. So that's still, the owners are still getting by on the players because that's an extra home game. That's some extra revenue. That's some more tickets that's being sold before the playoffs. And if you expand the playoffs, that's one team that can be added in. That's another home game. That's more concession. There's more, ticket sales. So that's the way that they look at it. That's even like the first collective bargaining agreement. The biggest issue was number one draft picks coming in, making $50 million off the bat. I know we love our LSU Tigers, but let's just call a spade a spade. Jamarcus Russell was an absolute bust, okay? But he was the first pick overall, and he got $50 guaranteed dollars. And players were looking at that, and, they were like, man, this dude was a bust, man. He making $50 million, and here I am. I got to wait till, this year in order for me to cash in. So a lot of them was like, man, that ain't fair. That wasn't fair for me to do. And, they look at that and now the new CBA was like, okay, well, we know that they want these rookies not to have so much money. So let's just go ahead and put this in the deal. And then we can add this, and this. But in the process, all they were focusing on was rookies, not getting that big contract. And when that happened, all of a sudden, like everything else that they included in there, all of the other players suffered. So now it's like, okay, you got that 5th-year option. Now, you know what I'm saying? Like, if you want to negotiate a contract, the team has the right to franchise tag you to death. Like, let's just use Odell Beckham, for example, right? The Giants didn't technically have to pay Odell Beckham. They could have kept on franchise tagging him for at least 3 years. So around that time, he's almost in like year 8. You know what I'm saying? So he in year 8, and around that time, a lot of teams look at a player almost kind of winding down, almost consider him damaged goods. So he didn't even get the majority of his money. That's the way that they look at it. They focus on one thing. They dangle that carrot, but they always looking at ways that they can be the winner on the end. And at the end, the owner's going to always win because they have all the leverage, because they got their hands on the checkbook. If they have a lockout, that's not going to hurt the owners. The owners still billionaires. It's going to hurt those players that have to count on that paycheck week after week after week. So that's the way I look at it. It's not fair. It sucks. I know it's terrible that they do this to these players. But at the end of the day, I just feel like the NFL has way too much power. Their ownership has way too much power. And I feel like out of all the sports, they respect their players the least. I mean, that's just the truth. You look at the NBA, like they're always trying to find ways to try to accommodate their players. Now, I mean, honestly, we get frustrated as fans the way that the NBA accommodates these players too much now. I mean, we be rolling our eyes and stuff like, man, come on, man. Like, man, game management, load management and stuff, letting these guys sit out, having special seats on the sidelines with cushion and all that kind of stuff. And, like, it's just ridiculous. But you can't say that they respect their players, and the NFL does not. The NFL does not respect the players the way that they should, man. Because anytime you start talking about contracts and stuff like that, that's when the media start coming out and the ownership start coming out. And honestly, man, we play a role too, and I think this is something that we need to stop. We get on these players about wanting their money, and we be like, they selfish, they need to, you know what I'm saying, like. And before anybody come at me and say, well, TJ, you was talking about Drew Brees and how he should, take a cut and all that kind of stuff. That's because Drew Brees has made over nearly $200 million playing for the Saints. I think, you know what I'm saying, like, but I'm talking about like some of these players that are young, some of these players that really go out here and they perform really well. They perform way beyond what their contract entails, and they still out here just getting paid peanuts. I mean, I think we need to stop that as fans. Excuse me. We need to stop that as fans getting on these players, and we need to kind of turn around and look at the owners, because they're the reason why these guys are sitting out. They know that these guys are up for contracts. They know it. I mean, honestly, if you signed a player 4 years ago and you know that, you know what I'm saying, like he up for a contract in his 5th year, he going into the 5th year, I mean, come on. Like, you know that, okay, man, this guy's up for a contract. Why are you prolonging the process? Because most of the time, honestly, they probably waiting on the season to happen. Like, possibly the guy can get hurt. Possibly the guy, you know what I'm saying, something can happen. Something like his play decline. And that give them leverage to say, well, we wanted to give you a contract, but, you got hurt. And it's unfortunate. We love everything you did, but we got to go out here and try to find somebody else. Or we got to go out here and draft somebody else. And that player gets absolutely nothing. And honestly, if you go to the free agency, you end up getting a player that costs much less than what the production of that player his contract was going to give him. That's the way the NFL does. I mean, it's a cutthroat organization. And man, like I don't get into the issues with the contracts. I don't look at a player any different that he trying to get his money, because as a man, as a human being, as a person that works every single day, I want my money too. And if I'm doing something really well, I want to be paid accordingly. So I feel like that's something that us as fans, we need to stop doing. A lot of times guys can be, a little selfish, but I mean, honestly, they have to be that way in order for them to get their money. Maurice is a piece of work, or another 4-letter word. I have never liked him. Man, he don't have the players' best interests at heart. I don't understand why they keep voting for him. Personally, I think that they need to go in a different direction. He was a guy that really didn't look out for the players, kind of sold them out, you know, and made it seem like, oh, this is what the players, this is what y'all wanted. Why y'all getting mad at me, man? You know, if it was a good deal, they elect you because they want you to be able to figure out if this is a good deal or not. Okay, and if it wasn't a good deal, then you should have went back to the players and said, man, I don't think this is the right idea. But I guess people were like starting to get on him, and because of the lockout and stuff like that, and guys started to get worried because it was longer than they anticipated. But man, sometimes you got to rest on your shield and be like, man, I don't feel like this is a good idea. And if y'all hard up for me to, what I'm saying, make a deal so y'all can get money, then fire me because I don't feel like this is the right deal. That's what you have to do, go down with your shield. But I don't think that happened. I just think that he sold the players out. What you think about what Mike T said about Romo? Taj, I already kind of mentioned that, man. I honestly, for the people that, that been on here, I don't want to repeat that. I just said that I feel like he right. And I went into detail about it, not too long ago. Who do you think are we targeting in free agency? Honestly, I don't know who we targeting specifically in free agency, but I can tell you some positions. The position I feel like we're going to be focusing on is a linebacker position. Don't be surprised if the Saints try to offer New York Giant Alec Ogletree some money or whatever like that to come to New Orleans. I can see him. Everson Griffin, I can see him probably being one of those guys that be one of those rotating defensive ends with the Saints. I also feel like the Saints are probably going to try to look at somebody team that got a safety or something like that. Offensive lineman. I think the Saints are going to try to get that into the draft. Look into the draft to try to get offensive linemen late because I guess they feel like they already have offensive linemen. They already got the replacement for Andrews Pete and Nick Easton. So I don't think that's just something that's imperative. They probably just going to be looking for somebody for rotation purposes. Let's see. That's where the incentives come into play. Yeah, man, those incentives. I mean, honestly, but some of those incentives are like crazy. They're designed not to be obtained. So a lot of those guys don't get the opportunities to get that money, and that sucks. What do you think we do with the first pick? With the first pick, I think the Saints probably going to end up getting a wide receiver. I think the way that some of these quarterbacks looked in the combine, I think that you can get yourself a quarterback in a late round. I don't think they're going to end up getting Jordan Love. I think he probably going to be in the top 15 the way that he was out there, man. And I don't think that they're going to get, some of these other guys like Justin Herbert or anything like that. I don't think anybody is going to get him besides the people probably in the top 10. And then Jordan Love probably going to fall into like the top 15 or something like that. Also, the Saints might try to move up to get him. But the way that I look at somebody like a Jalen Hurts, the quarterback out of Washington State or something like that, I think the Saints can still get a credible young quarterback late in the round. So I think you might want to focus on your skill positions. Rather, you getting a wide receiver, like I said, like a Denzel Mims. If you want to try to gamble on Laviska Shenault, I mean, he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, because he's getting core surgery. But if you want to get that guy, then that'll be fine. Justin Jefferson, I seen somebody mention Justin Jefferson running a 4.4, having good hands, leading his team in catches. Last season, the only question mark that people had was his speed, and now he runs a 4.4, probably going to be a top 15 pick as well. Somebody going to probably get him early. So that's my take on that, man. And also, man, I want to give credit to somebody, speaking of combine. I want to give a special shout out to Jeff Okudah. Jeff Okudah is the number 1 rated cornerback out of Ohio State. Got a lot of respect for that kid, man. This guy will easily be a top 5 pick, but he decides to go to the combine anyway to show that he can compete. And he ended up, kind of hurting himself, man, running a drill. And, a lot of people are like, man, that's the reason why you shouldn't do it. You messing with your money. You messing with your bread. But I got a lot of pride, and a lot of respect for Jeff Okuda, because this guy out here could have easily phoned it in like his teammate Chase Young, I hate to say it, like a Joe Burrow, and said basically, I'm going to do it on my time and my terms. But he wanted to go out here and leave a legacy, man. He said, you look at some of these star players, these future Hall of Famers, they did the combine. He said, and I want somebody to look at my tape and be inspired by what I do. A lot of respect for that dude, man. I mean, he ended up hurting himself in a field drill, but it wasn't to a point where, it's going to affect his draft stock or anything like that. Those are the type of guys I want on my team. Now, Jeff Okuda, I mean, he's not going to go to the Saints. I mean, that's just wishful thinking. But I would want to play, if I can play football, I would want that guy to be my teammate. I would want that guy on my team because that's the type of passion that I want a player to have. That's the type of passion that I want to see on Sunday from some of these players. So, man, shouts out to him. I mean, I think when I started talking about injuries, his name kind of popped in my head. So, want to give a respect. I want to give respect to that guy, man. Jeff Okuda, man, class act. Classic guy, going end up having a C on his chest eventually one day. That's the kind of leadership you want on your squad. But that's all the time I have, man. I got to get to work. Got an interview that I have to do for the station here. Got to start prepping for that. But thank y'all very much for taking the time out to check out the State of the Saints podcast video. Also subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com. Search the State of the Saints podcast. Thank y'all for y'all questions. The State of the Game podcast is available also on YouTube, youtube.com, search State of the Game. And thank you all for your love and your support, and I hope you have a good day. And I'm just looking forward to the NFL draft. More videos are going to be coming up about, some of these players, and I'm going to really focus now that the combine is over. I can really have an idea at where some of these players are going to fall and how they can affect and help the New Orleans Saints, and maybe the Saints end up getting them in maybe the later rounds. But y'all be on the lookout for some of these videos. Till next time, all I got to say is, who dat?